Hey guys, David the physics tutor over at GCC, and this is part 2 of my series versus parallel connection. So here I have two different circuits, and I would encourage you to pause the video and see if you can identify all the series and parallel connections in each circuit. At the end of the video, I'm just going to show you the answers to them, but in the meantime, I'm going to walk through how we get there. And let me give a big thanks to Dr. Frank at GCC, who was my circuits professor, where I got these circuits from. I got these circuits from his slides. So let's get into it. Well, again, for something to be a series connections, and let's just start with one circuit at a time. In order for something to be a series connections, all the elements need to be on the same wire, and that current can only go through those specific elements. So if I start from here, I notice that these are all on the same wire, right? Because once I reach this junction here, I have a problem because I can either go this way or I can go that way, and same thing here. So I know that I, C, A, and D are all one series connections. All of those are in series because they're all on the same wire. The current has to flow through all of those elements. And let's see if we can find another. Well, we find another one right here, right? K and J, the current has to flow through those two elements. So now I know K and J. And I see, okay, down here I have MOP or MOP. And I have those those three elements, I'm sorry. Now I have MOP. And I say, okay, there's another one up here, right? Current has to flow through these three. I have EBF. So those are all of the series connections, because now I notice that the rest of them are going to be between junctions, right? These junctions are just another path for the current to flow. It's where current is going to meet other current. And so now I have to identify if they're parallel, right? In order for something to be parallel, the elements need to be able to reach each other two different ways without crossing another element. So I noticed that H can reach L and it can also reach N one way. Then I also noticed that it can reach H and L the other way, and it can reach it on the other end without crossing any other elements. So I know 100% that HL and N are parallel connections. But what about G? Well, they can all reach G this way, but there's no other way for the elements to reach G on the opposite end. And so that we know that G is not going to be in parallel with anything. So our only parallel pair down here, make sure you can see what I'm writing, H, L, and then N. So those three are in parallel. G is neither series or parallel with anything. And if I scroll down, I can actually compare this to my answer slide right here. Notice how I get the same thing. Alrighty, now let's go into our second circuit. Now when we look at this circuit, what do we notice? Let me get this set. We notice that none of them are going to be in series, right? Because every element is between a junction. There's a path for the current to, or there's an option for the current to flow somewhere between every single element. So we know that looking at this circuit, there's actually going to be none for series connections. None. Now let's do the parallel connections. And this is tricky because it's very grid-like, so it might seem like a lot of them can reach each other, but remember, for a parallel connection, they need to reach each other two different ways without crossing another element. So I noticed that C and G can reach each other this way. And they can also reach D and H. Now I know D and H aren't going to be in parallel because I see that B and K are blocking any other path to get to D and H. But then I see C, G, and J. Those all reach each other. And then I have to ask myself, well, can they reach each other another way? The answer is yes, right? They reach each other on this opposite end without crossing any of the elements. So I can say that C, G, and J are one parallel connection. And I think it's just good practice to make the rest of the wire the same color just to represent that it's the same voltage, because remember, wire has ideally zero resistance, so it would be the same voltage on the same wire. Now let's do D and H. Well, I noticed that D and H reach each other on this red connection, And they also reach each other on this green connection, right? And then I say, well, can they reach anything else? Well, I know that in terms of this red path, C, G, and J are going to block anything off. So I know that those are going to be done. So I know this is done, I know this is done, I know this is done. And then D and H reach each other. There's no other path. And so D and H would be my second pair. Because those two reach each other two different ways without crossing any other elements. And then I say, okay, well, let's cross those out. D and H are done. What about B, A, K, E, I, and F? Well, I noticed that here, B and K reach each other, right? They reach each other through this green connection, and they also reach each other through this purple connection without crossing any of the elements. So I see that B and K are in parallel, and then I say, oh, well, also I, right? Because all three of these reach each other, and then they also reach this purple connection down here. But not E because F is in the way, right? So only B, K, and I are in parallel. So I don't know, I'll just do red. B, K, and I would be a third one. Let me erase my highlight. And now I can cross those off. B, K, and I. Now I only have 3 elements left. Well, I know E is going to be kind of my neither was the color I haven't used. I haven't used light blue because E is blocked off by all elements that have already been used. So I know this is going to be neither. But then I check A and F, and I see that A can reach F without crossing any other elements that way, and then A can also reach F on this long path around. So technically, A and F would be a parallel pair. And those, now I'm done. Every element has been accounted for, so we have all of our series and parallel connections, and we can see the answer slide here. And this would be answer slide for both circuits. So hopefully that makes sense in identifying series and parallel connections. Maybe in the next video I'll go more into the physics of how it affects voltage and current.